Welcome back to Mornings on 2. The time now is 8:37. In 1984, the Bay Area's Terry Healey was 20 years old, a student at Cal Berkeley, and had the world by the tail. That all changed after he was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, and his cancer was on the face, eventually leading to disfiguring surgery. In At Face Value, Terry has written about this time in his life, and he joins me this morning. Nice to have you here.
Good morning, Ross.
Between the time, 1984, you were diagnosed, and today, how many surgeries have you had?
It's at least 30. I think I stopped counting at about 30.
Yeah, the first surgeries to get rid of the cancer altogether,
Right.
Fibrosarcoma, I believe it was
Fibrosarcoma,
called.
correct. My first couple of procedures were very minor in comparison to what happened when I had a recurrence, which was about 6 months later, and then I had 3 more cancer surgeries. But really, the remaining 25 were all related to reconstruction.
Reconstruction.
Yeah.
How many times did the doctors say to you, we got it all, and then they had to go back in?
Definitely after the first procedure, which left me with really no disfiguring scars at all, I was told, we caught this in the early stages, you should feel good, we don't need any more treatment, no radiation, no chemotherapy. When I went back 6 months later, that's when it was very devastating in terms of the magnitude of the cancer. But still, I had a very optimistic, positive, confident doctor who said, we're going to lick this thing together, we're going to get through this. And I think that played a big part in it, and I believed that I was going to be cured, and I never really thought backwards about it.
When did you first suspect there was a problem?
It's interesting. I was somewhat oblivious to what was going on, but it really took probably 3 separate incidents for me to realize I probably need to go see a doctor. The first couple were people that knew me, but I didn't see on a regular basis, who would look at me and say, something about your nose that looks like your nostrils flared out. And then it took really getting my Cal student ID card and looking at that card and saying, maybe I should go see a doctor. My nose doesn't look quite right. And that's really when I went to the doctor, and unfortunately was diagnosed initially as having a pimple, which was somewhat humiliating.
Well, I know you were, I don't know if it was at the fraternity house at Cal or you were wrestling with a bunch of guys and your nose started to bleed and wouldn't start, and that was a problem. And then your brother said something to you as well, and you went to the, when you were diagnosed with cancer, rare form of cancer, you knew you were going to have to go through all this surgery. What were some of your first thoughts?
I think shock, which is a typical reaction that a lot of people would have. But I think at the age of 21, I was like a lot of other 21-year-olds. I didn't think that I felt like I was invincible. Nothing could really happen to me.
You're immortal, yeah.
Right? And so I think that was part of it. The other part was that it wasn't as shocking as it might be, in that my particular biopsy took about 5 weeks to actually get the results for. So that period of time sort of gave me that chance to kind of get used to, maybe I do have cancer. Yeah. So for me, really, the shock and the devastation of what I had became apparent when the recurrence happened 6 months later.
And you were very honest in the book. You said one of the first things you thought about is girls.
Yep.
Is a girl ever going to want to go out with me again?
Yeah, I think at that age, that unfortunately appearances are very important, and having relationships was very important to me specifically. So that was probably the most difficult thing. I mean, I kind of categorize relationships in a couple different ways, and there's the intimate relationships that we have, and then there's the day-to-day relationships. The day-to-day relationships that we encounter in the workplace or on the street actually were very, very difficult, and I think that those pointings, those starings, those people's jaws dropping and shock at the sight of me, those types of things added up and made my confidence sink lower and lower, which...
In all honesty, though, people don't do that now, though, do they? Because, I mean, this is the first time we've met, and I don't have that reaction at all.
No, and I think, the lesson really is that it's how you feel on the inside, and it's how confident you are on the inside that really matters, and it's not so much how other people perceive you, but how you perceive yourself.
We only have a minute left, because I want to talk about Dina, and I want to talk about your wife. Dina really kind of turned it for you. You met her in the hospital. Mm-hmm. She had cancer herself, correct?
She did have cancer, yes. She was in there for a blood clot at that point, but Yeah, it was a really instrumental time and fortunate timing for me to meet her in the hospital, because I was at that point where I was sinking pretty low. I'd had 30 surgeries. What am I going to do with myself? She was this beautiful woman who had a great attitude. She took an interest in me. We ended up having a relationship, and an intimate relationship, and it was the first intimate relationship I had had since before, with somebody that didn't know me before. At the end of that relationship, though, she said a couple words to me. She said, you have some serious issues, Terry, that I don't think I can help you with, and you've got to deal with this yourself, and so you need help. Your scars are far more disfigured on the inside than they ever were on the outside.
Yeah.
So that was a big stepping stone for me.
And then you met Sue, who you're married. You're married today?
I'm married today. I've been married about 7 years, and Sue's another great story for me, because we had 2 dates together before she even asked what had happened to me, and so that told me a lot about Sue, that this woman doesn't really care what happened to me, but she really cares who I am. So.
Well, it's a very honest story, and he really tells it from the heart, and we get a feeling of how his family, who you have how many brothers in all?
I have 3 older brothers.
Yeah, and the parents and all reacted to this whole thing. The book is online, www.face-value.com, @face-value.com. Terry, nice to meet you this morning.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
Time now is 8:40.